He's a villain that's too hot to handle. Here's your look at the new Hasbro Spider-Man Far From Home Molten Man. The villainous Molten Man gets his powers from the liquid metal that covers his body. Just before we have a look at Molten Man, let's figure out how tall the figure stands. We're going to take the tape measure and put it right to the very top of his head. Seems like he's about the same height, in all honesty, as the other Spider-Man figures that we've had a look at. According to the Ultra Measure 5000, 5.6 inches in height, which in centimeters works out to be 14.2 centimeters tall. Being that proof is in the pudding, let's bring in some of the figures that we had a look at. In fact, let's have a look at all the figures we had a look at. Still having problems with him standing. There's T-Cozy Spider-Man, Unnamed Spider-Man, Stealth Spider-Man, and Pepsi Clear Spider-Man. Just kind of giving them any names that I want. There's the four figures. The three figures, of course, being the Spider-Man that we already had a look at. Molten Man is pretty small. Based on what we've seen so far, Molten Man's pretty big, and yet, unfortunately for the toy, they shrunk him down to about the same height as all the other Spider-Man figures. At least to his credit, Molten Man does actually have a name on the packaging. They just didn't call him Spider-Man. I would really have cried foul if they had also called this one Spider-Man. He does come with an accessory, and the accessory is kind of like a molten ball missile in which he fires it out. But I have to admit, where they've put it just has me scratching my head. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You would almost even think that it should go here, or at the very least it could have also replaced his fist. But no, of all places, they very awkwardly decide that Molten Man's boulder is actually going to be at the side on an angle, something up my sleeve, if you will. I don't feel like this makes any sense whatsoever as to why they put this here. Obviously, for starters, it's only going to fire on angles, so it's not going to fire whoever he's facing. Rather, instead, it's going to be facing and firing this way here. To fire it off, by the way, there is no button or anything like that. It's just friction pressed, and it fires the missile out. Again, like, I don't know why they would have done this. It just makes the arm ultimately look awkward. It looks like you've taken his hand, broken it off, and decided to shift its way up his forearm. At the very least, why couldn't they have, again, changed the ball right here to make it more like his hand? And then you could have just put the hand as the firing missile, and it could have just gone right there. Now, I'm no toy designer. Not at all. That's not the field that I would work in. Well, it's a field I would love to work in. It's obviously not a field I'm currently working in right now, based on the fact that you're seeing these reviews on this channel. But I can say, though, from enough experience looking at toys, it just seems me odd that his fist is way over there, and the firing missile is way over there. It kind of ends up making it look like he's got two fists. That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right. We'll just put that to the side. And ultimately, when you do take it out, it kind of looks like he's got a big, well, it does. He's got a big honking hole in his arm. That aside, the problem also is he doesn't have hinges in his elbows. It's really strange that they didn't decide to give this guy any hinges in his elbows. So even though he does have a little bit more plastic to his credit, he doesn't have as much the posability that Spider-Man has. Yes, I know you could also rotate the arm up, but yeah, that fist, it's kind of going sad. It's heading downstairs. I don't know where that fist is going. It also isn't even the same color as the rest of his arm. Okay. So we got to move on. Producers tell me move on from the missile. We've already kind of gone to town on that. How does the figure look? Figure actually doesn't look terrible. I do dig the paint scheme that they've given this guy. I mean, at face value, if you look at it, I mean, it's really only translucent orange. It suffers more from the back than it does from the front. It's a translucent orange figure. But I like the fact that they've given them this kind of bronze, kind of gold sheen over top of it. It glistens in the way that Molten should glisten. Some of the areas cooling off, the liquid metal cooling off on the surface. And then, of course, the hotter inner center of the Cadbury egg is still moving quite freely around. The head actually kind of reminds me a little bit of a skull, but it also reminds me of Clayface and Pizza the Hut. How's that for an old reference? Let's just put the figure down for a second and just think for a second that we went the route of a Spaceballs reference. It's a good day to be alive. The figure does look a little bit like, for me, Pizza the Hut mixed with Clayface. I guess that's the look that they're going with. Probably not the look that they wanted to go with, but that's the look that I'm thinking I'm going to go with for the rest of this review. The head sculpt's decent. It does sort of look like it's sectional, obviously, because it's a different head from the rest of the body. I almost even would have... I mean, they have head posability to his credit, but even like when you have it straight on, the line divides it, ultimately kind of makes it look like the head is a separate piece from the rest of his body, which really it is. He does have these kind of metal beams and chains and stuff kind of melded and molded into his body. I really like that. It's a neat looking effect. Again, if they could have done something a little bit different, more creative, I think with the missile placement. Really, again, loving that copper. I think it's more like a copperish gold color that they've put it just kind of on the surface of the plastic. It's something that really, as you're looking at it from different angles, it really just grabs the light and runs with it. Really liking that. Unfortunately, again, like I said, it only really is affecting the front of the figure. When you spin it around, some of the backs of the arms get it, and the torso gets it, but I mean, the guy who was painting these just has decided to leave early for the day. I wish he could have finished the bottom half of it, too. It's goopy and it's melty, but if it only could have had afforded some of that additional glorious paint that I like so much about down here. I mean, because it just seems so empty and so alone in life. I mean, anyone arguing the point would say, well, you know, the figures... You're not likely to probably display the figure from the back. Maybe I am. Maybe I am, just to spite the whole lot of you. No, you're right. I would probably only display the figure from the front. So you're really not going to see the very unfinished end of Molten Man being delivered here on the legs, the calves, and the feet. Great sculpt, though, I have to admit. Really great, fine work done for this guy. But man, he really should have been a Build-A-Figure. Not even that the basic class figures ever get awarded, you know, a Build-A-Figure, but this guy should have been a larger play set. If anything, should have been a larger play set. Maybe I'm jumping too quickly to say that, and maybe we may eventually get ourselves a big, oversized Molten Man that you could have those smaller Spider-Man figures kind of flying around. Maybe this is just sort of the entryway into a Molten Man design. You never know. You never know. It is curious, though, that we are getting ourselves a Molten Man in Wave 1 before we get ourselves what we believe to be the main villain in Far From Home, Mysterio. Part of me also even thinks that Molten Man is just an illusion, something that Mysterio, fabricated to make himself look more like a hero. Because we know Mysterio is an actor. They allude that he's from another dimension, but I kind of feel like he's just playing the role of an actor and wanting Spider-Man to be convinced that he has all these cosmic abilities. You never know, Molten Man could very well be one of those illusions. I'm kind of alluding way in advance. I'm certainly not Time Jumper. If Time Jumper was here, he could probably tell me. Although maybe even just revealing that would cause a series of cataclysmic events, some of which we would never even be able to connect together with the review of Molten Man. So maybe he won't even tell us. Needless to say, for posability, boy, these reviews get off tangent. The head rotates all the way around. It does feel like it's, I wanted to say, a slightly softer plastic than the rest of his body. I'm going to go with that. Slightly softer plastic than the rest of Molten Man's body. His hands rotate, or arms rotate all the way around. This arm hinges also out. This arm also hinges out. But the forearm only rotates here. And actually, it does better than this one here. This one doesn't have any sort of swiveling happening whatsoever there. And then, of course, for legs, tried and true. I mean, nothing much changes there for Molten Man. He even does have the go-to peg holes on the undersides of his feet. decent figure, and actually it's pleasant. I'm happy that we did at the very least get ourselves a villain. Be very disappointed if we had just got nothing but Spider-Man. And even though we are going to be getting a ton of Spider-Man figures, I more than relish when we get ourselves the occasional villain. With Spider-Man Far From Home seeming to have multiple villains, hopefully that will also translate to having multiple villain figures as well. For the time being, though, all we have is poor, lonely, slightly smaller Molten Man to fight against the 3 Spider-Man figures that we've already had a look at. For final looks, I'll admit I was going to try to come up with some clever name to call Molten Man, but I think I like him. I'm going to keep him. I'm not going to destroy this painting like the Joker does in Batman 89. He says, no, leave it, Bob. I like this one. I like Molten Man, so I'm not going to disservice him by coming up with some strange, weird nickname that I myself only find probably to be funny and nobody else does. I will say, though, as good as this figure is, he does have shortcomings, probably short being the operative word. He is very small. He obviously isn't this size based on what I've seen so far of the film, and I haven't seen the film so far. Don't ruin it for me, Time Jumper. Don't ruin it for me, Time Jumper. I have not seen the film yet, nor has anybody else, so we don't really know to the scale and scope that Molten Man gets to. Maybe eventually, at some point in the film, he is this size. Probably not. Maybe Hasbro will eventually give us a larger-than-life, not larger-than-life, but larger-than-Spider-Man version of this figure, because I really do think that there's potential to be made for this figure, even though right now we kind of get someone that's about the same size as Spider-Man. And of course, the elephant in the room, because the figure can't be completely perfect, the big one is obviously the missile. What's going on there? Why was this a good decision? The hand is way off stretched to the side of his forearm, leaving space for a missile that I really don't think should have even been there in the first place. Again, they could have easily just swapped that missile placement out for his fist. When the missile was in his socket, he would have had a fully swivelable, is that a word? Swivelable? A swivelable wrist. Or you could have fired the missile out, and then he would not have had a hand. This is old school figures. This is stuff that figures back in the day would have had. Firing hands, and then nothing would have been there when the hand was fired out. I don't know why they had to put the missile right there. It just seems so awkward. And now it looks like he's got 2 fists. I mean, it sounds great on paper. 2 fists. Could you imagine having 2 fists on the end of your wrists? I mean, that sounds great. But then, obviously, logistically, there's no way that 2 hands would be able to work together like that. One couldn't really write a letter, for example, while the other one was cutting out snowflakes. It just wouldn't work like that. You gotta think science. And science would tell us you can't have 2 fists on the end of wrists. Time Jumper would probably tell me that as well. Producers are just shaking their head. They're like, I don't even, what are we even paying this guy for? You don't pay me! You don't pay me! I do this for free, and the sandwiches that I might also add haven't been on the tables for the last, speak to catering. Yeah, speak to catering. Either way, if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, Molten Man, along with the other 3 figures that we've had a look at thus far, should be available now in retail stores and toy stores if you have one in your area. I hate to be somebody that reminds you that you don't have a Toys R Us in your area, but check around. They should be available, and they're moderately priced too. They're not going to break the bank. Unless in your bank account you have, I guess it would be like $14.65, maybe give or take. If you have that in your bank account, then yes, that will break the bank. These figures will be $12.99 in stores, current Canadian prices, that is. So again, happy hunting and good luck if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself. Let me know down below, guys, in the comments section what you think of Molten Man. Do you think he's a decent enough figure, or if you picked him up for yourself? Let me know down below in the comments section. In the meantime, though, make sure you hit that little subscribe square. It's a little square of red in the bottom right-hand corner of this screen, or you can also hit the subscribe link that's just below in the video description. Also, if you guys want to go and head over to my Spider-Man playlist, I've also got that link down below as well. Stay tuned, guys, because we're going to have more videos coming your way, and maybe you never know, we might also have a look at some more Spider-Man Far From Home. It's a pretty safe assumption to be making. We're probably going to be having a look at some more Spider-Man Far From Home toys in future reviews. So stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.